Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good evening, and welcome to the WTF1 Wrap, powered by MoneyGram. It's our post-qualifying show. It's the big F1 question show. I'm your host, Dre Harrison, and with me, once again, is my wonderful assistant, Miss Hannah Atkinson. Hello, Hannah.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well. I
Very well after that qualifying session, right?
we have news.
Yes.
There is hope. Like this is no disrespect to Max Verstappen. I
Of
promise.
course, of course.
Like as a neutral sports fan, it's just nice as a somewhat journo to have some news to talk about. Because honestly, after FP3, I thought it was going to be ominous that Max Verstappen was going to be on pole by half a second. He was going to take it easy. And, it was going to be very, very straightforward. We've actually got some intrigue to go into the race tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, in sports in general, if something's one way a lot of the time and then you have something unexpected happen, it's exciting, okay? It is exciting. And Max is a great driver and we all know he would have got pole position today if it wasn't for that problem. But it's fun. I don't know about you, it made Q3 really intriguing to watch.
Well, of course. I mean, okay. A part of me still thought, well, it's just going to be Checo on pole instead.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm glad at least Charles Leclerc made it close in the Ferrari. But then again, the one guy who got close is the guy with the 10-place grid penalty.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Of course.
Alonso on the second row tomorrow will be great.
Front row, because he stopped.
Sorry, I meant that. I don't know why I said second.
Third row, but he did technically qualify third, but because of the Leclerc penalty, he'll now be starting second. So
yeah,
I am expecting an Alonso send into turn one.
Oh yeah, I haven't even thought that far ahead, but yes.
He said it after Canada last year in when he qualified on the front row. There was also, I'm going to go for it into turn one. Didn't quite work out that way.
No,
but I admire the as we say in sports, the good old college try. But hello chat, thanks for joining us. I promise I'll get to some of your comments over the course of the show. We're going to talk a little bit of qualifying. Some of you sent in your questions as well, which we'll talk about over the course of the next half hour or so. But we also got a very special guest to answer some of those questions for us as well. We've got an interview with Reema Juffali coming up in about 5-10 minutes time or so on the Big F1 Questions WTF1 Wrap. So thank you for joining us, everybody. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. Guys in the chat, I'd love to know, where do you think Max Verstappen will end up in the race tomorrow? I'll read out some of your comments towards the end of the show on that one. I also love that good friend of mine, Christina's in the chat saying, how mad are you that Sebastian Vettel is not in that Aston Martin right now? As the big Sebastian Vettel fan, I only have one thing to say to you in response, Christina. You're absolutely right.
I have a lot of sympathy for you, Dre, because if I was in your shoes as a huge Sebastian Vettel fan, I would be fuming.
I know. It's like I'm sure he's happy in retirement, and if he's happy, I'm happy. But, I'm happy for all the Aston Martin team that, the pace of their car seems genuine and that it's still holding up. And it looks like Aston Martin still genuinely might have the second best all-round race car. And that's something to take on board. Alonso, within half a second in qualifying, that's pretty good going. I mean, it's hard to get a true read on it because, again, there is no Max. For those guys who maybe you've missed the news, Verstappen had a drive shaft failure in Q2, so he'll be starting 15th at best for tomorrow. Again, maybe have to change a gearbox. We'll have to wait and see what the damage is and whether they can look into it. But at best, he'll be starting from P15 tomorrow, which I guess in of itself makes it quite intriguing. So, again, where do you think he'll end up? I'm already seeing some comments. Andrew reckons he's going to win. Fessler reckons a win. Bobby reckons P3. So
I have to agree with everyone saying a win, I have to say.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time he's won from that far back. I mean, last year he had multiple races where he finished from 10th or worse. Belgium, he won from 14th on the grid and was leading by half distance.
Exactly, like it's happened before, and now that the Red Bull is so much more dominant, surely it's inevitable, right?
Maybe. I mean, the fact there's no tyre drop-off gives me a little bit of hope that he might have a bit more of a hard time trying to pass people, but at the same time, the Red Bull is so fast in a straight line. It's got like 3 or 4 miles an hour on the rest of the field in the speed traps. And this is
I suppose it depends what happens in terms of safety cars and everything like that, because you just never know.
Yeah, I think Perez has still got a very, very good chance to win. I'll say that much, given he's at the front of the queue. But I think second or third is very doable for Max tomorrow, I would say. A couple other things to take out from qualifying as well, Hannah. The Mercedes are quite split up. George Russell will be starting third tomorrow after it's all said and done, after the penalty comes into play. Lewis Hamilton down in a net P7, half a second apart. Was there a reason why Hamilton was so slow in the end? Because that was just eyebrow raising.
It feels like there should be a reason for that. I mean, I don't know if there was or not, if it's been mentioned, post quali or anything, but I am surprised to see them so far apart. I feel like last race and also the end of last season, they were very, very close together. I felt like it could go either way with them. One was beating one in quali, and then the next week it would be the other way around. And if they were to qualify, they would normally be around the same amount.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to see. I wonder what happened there. It is exciting for Russell though to start, so far up the grid tomorrow. I wonder what he can do.
Seen some tidbits from the media. Hamilton saying he's got no feeling or confidence in his car. He says he can't do what Russell's doing with the car at the moment, basically.
Wow, so it's a mental thing then.
Could be. I've seen Mike in the comments also saying that Angela is already missed, which oh no.
That's a great point. Maybe it's a lack of Angela that's got Hamilton down in P7.
But then Toto admitted in the press conference yesterday that it was Hamilton's call to separate from Angela. So
what?
I don't know.
That's news to me, but that's interesting. Okay.
Drama. Who knows?
Drama, yeah, I know.
Who
I
knows?
feel like everyone loves Angela.
Exactly. So, what could have possibly happened there? Was my first thought. So
I've seen so many memes of breaking news: Angela to go to Red Bull in 2023.
the world's most cared about physiotherapist. It's
absolutely
the power of Hamilton, everybody. But yeah, also shout out before we move into the real questions real quick as well. Shout out to Oscar Piastri qualifying in Q3 and qualifying P8 overall. Once the Leclerc penalty comes in, that's a hell of a job for Oscar. Second qualifying session, Q3, top 10.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, as well, you have to think about the teammate in that situation. It's like Norris out in Q1.
Q1.
Yeah.
Hit the wall.
Exactly. And I think it's frustrating for Lando in that sense, because now that Piastri's got into Q3, you feel like there was some sort of pace in that Mercedes. And McLaren. not yet.
It's on Mercedes power. We'll give you that.
Exactly. So part of Lando is probably thinking, oh, if only that didn't happen, I could have got into the top 10, especially because of how bad the McLaren was looking last race, So it's a shame for Lando, but, Piastri's doing bits in that McLaren at the moment.
Well, it was Lando's mistake of his own back. He hit the inside wall in Q1 and damaged the front of his car, so it was all driver error. And Piastri showing that the car is a bit quicker than we probably thought. I mean, there was a little bit of hope from Norris in the press conferences going into this race, saying that, it's not a crisis, it's not a disaster, maybe there's more to this car than what it seems, but maybe they were onto something with that. So I
hope Charlie's happy watching. McLaren fan.
she's probably done backflips knowing that her beloved McLaren actually has a bit of pace in it. So that's one. Let's get into some of your questions here. We got the first one sent in on social media from Shadowwave6. I believe that's on Twitter, and he sent in a question asking us, saying, "Do you believe Lance Stroll will get a podium this year?" Are we sure this isn't Kieran's burner account?
It probably is, let's be real.
It might be for all we know, but do you believe Lance Stroll will get a podium finish this year? What do you reckon, Hannah?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, hands down, I feel like that's not even a question. I feel like the better question is, will he get a win this year? I mean, I know that's quite extreme, but if you look at the pace of the Aston Martin, it's just amazing. Second best team at the moment. And 2 weeks ago in Bahrain, Lance did an amazing performance and he wasn't 100% fit. We all know about what happened to his wrist and it's his big toe on his right foot, left foot, whatever one. He wasn't 100% fit and he still showed that he could drive that Aston Martin really well. And, I think it's only going to get better. And I think he's shown a strong performance in the practice sessions that we've had so far in Saudi. And I think, he definitely will get a podium at some point. I think out of the two drivers in that Aston Martin, if any of them are going to get a podium, it's more likely to be Alonso at the moment, of course. But there's always going to be safety cars, tire strategy, all of these things that could happen in a race that could mix it up a bit. So I feel like there's definitely going to be chances for Stroll this year to get into that podium position. And I think he's a strong enough driver to hold that P3 and, get a podium at the end of a race. I think he might even get multiple.
Yeah, I think again, if this was asked before the season, I'd have called you crazy. But the way
yeah.
the way Aston Martin have been so far this season, again, I think on paper they may have the second best car in the field right now. And if they have the second best car in the field, and Red Bull has a bad day, Aston Martin could very well be in the driving seat when we're talking P2s, maybe even a win or two. You never know in F1. You're guaranteed at least one wacky race every season in Formula One, and that's almost a given. It's why I generally think people talking about potentially running the table can be a little bit crazy, because it's the biggest season ever at 23 rounds. Red Bull were brilliant last year, but even then, I think they won 17 last year out of 23. So if Red Bull has a bad day and Aston Martin have the number 2 car in the field, there's bound to be opportunities for Lance Stroll to break into that podium spot.
Yeah.
I still think he's not quite as strong as Alonso, even if Stroll makes a full recovery. I think Fernando is still driving at a very, very high level, and props to him for doing so at 41 years young. He's redefining the age game when it comes to Formula One, and I think he's been fantastic this season. I don't think Stroll's a million miles behind, so I think there's a good chance that, I think all it would take would be for maybe one Red Bull to have an off day, and that could open up the door for Stroll to potentially get on the podium. So I think at some point over the course of the very busy season, that I think there's a very, very strong possibility that...
look at today's qualifying session. You never know what's going to happen. Max,
exactly.
Out. So, it's definitely, surely at some point going to happen again, like you said, where one of the top teams has an off day, and then there we go. Podium for Aston Martin, podium for Lance, win for Alonso. Anything's possible.
Yeah. Well, the podium was near on merit in Bahrain. The only real, I'd say, potential outlier was a Charles Leclerc engine failure, but given it was Ferrari, how much of an outlier is that really?
Exactly.
But we got some more questions coming up from you guys, but we wanted to introduce a special guest to answer them and bring a bit of a local flavour to the Big F1 question stream this time around. It's a interview I did yesterday, so forgive me if my top magically changes in the next 30 seconds or so. But we conducted it yesterday with Reema Juffali. She's the first woman to ever represent Saudi Arabia in motorsport. She's got a fantastic team with Tiba Motorsport that's come up in the last year or so. She's doing fantastic things in Saudi Arabia to help promote diversity and get more opportunities for women into motorsport. And we talked a little bit of F1 as well. So we'll see you in about 10 minutes. But here's that interview now with Reema Juffali. And, again, it was a fantastic interview, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you in a little bit. Hi guys, joining us on the WTF1 channel right now is Reema Juffali. Hello Reema, how are you?
I'm very well, how are you?
Excited, a little bit nervous. I'm not normally used to doing the big interviews all of a sudden, but hopefully...
Big interview, I don't know about that.
It is, just take it from me. I promise you this is a big deal, okay? But hopefully we'll ease our way into it and, we'll have a great time. But first and foremost, Reema, you're obviously an incredibly important figure, racing and representing Saudi Arabia, the first woman to represent Saudi Arabia on this level. I've got to ask, what inspired you to get into motorsport first and foremost? Because obviously, let's be honest, Saudi Arabia is not a massive racing country as far as we know, compared to, F1's very European focused and what have you. So what inspired you to get into motorsport from...
Yeah, my story, I guess, it is a bit unconventional. Like you said, I didn't grow up around the motorsport culture. I had, heard of F1 and in a kind of in the background. Rallying was quite big in Saudi at the time, but didn't really take much interest in that. But I've always been very kind of like a big motorhead, a car fanatic. So that was always something from a child. Like they couldn't get me away from cars. I knew so much about it. But it wasn't until I went to university and started just kind of getting to know all the different sports, and I came across Formula One, and was one of the, I think it was the first thing I was like, oh, this looks interesting. It's cars. It's a sport. I should. And I didn't understand anything about Formula One, like zero. So I remember I had a paper and a pen and trying to understand the flag signals, the rules, everything. And what got me into motorsport was actually the 24 hours of Le Mans. I watched that race and I saw the variety of drivers, I mean, from pros to amateurs, the different ages. And that's when I realized that it's not an impossible dream, that it's never too late. And it's just that little seed that I kind of had, and with time and with many years later managed to, yeah, kind of put that time and the effort to just get my racing license, and then one thing led to another, and doors opened. But it was very much just the understanding that there is a opportunity out there.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm glad you're able to pave your own way. And of course, must be a huge honor to represent your country in such an incredible endeavor. And I mean, you talked about one thing leading into another as well. I mean, talk to me about your team, Tiba Motorsport. I mean, you created that last year, didn't you? Tell me about how that's going to grow over the next few years.
Yeah, it's so far, Diba Motorsport has been like a full-time project. And in the beginning was pretty much just about myself, racing, learning my craft, growing as a driver, getting my head around the world of motorsport, which is, people say it's small, but there's a lot to it, and so much to it. And I guess breaking into the sport for me was very, I guess, with the right people that I knew, I managed to find the right path to find for myself to grow as a driver. And it's not the same for everyone else. I think a lot of people have questions. They want to know how to get into motorsport, not just from the driving side. Some people even just, whether it's a mechanic or an engineer or even in PR, there's so much to it. And when, I've been racing now for, I think, 4.5 years, and I felt like, okay, I kind of understand what the sport is about. And there was kind of a gap in the market here in Saudi. There wasn't a platform per se, or a Saudi team competing internationally. And that's when I thought, okay, I need to create opportunity as well as improve the driver. And that's the idea of Diba Motorsport came about from that. And the idea behind the team is really to be able to create this opportunity through internship program, mentorship programs, and allow, I think drivers were not focused at the moment, but more so engineers, mechanics, all these skills that you really do need the experience to learn on the job. So yeah, it's been really fun starting this project and seeing it grow. And it's only been a year now, and our dreams are big. So I'm looking forward to the future.
Le Mans one day, given how big that inspired you?
Definitely. The dream was initially just myself and Le Mans. Now it's to enter enter as a Saudi team with Saudis. So it's a much bigger dream, and I think it's achievable.
Fingers crossed. We would love to see you on the Le Mans grid one day. Now, we got to talk a little Formula One while we're here. This isn't an F1 channel after all. We've got a few questions in from some of our fans on social media. Nathan Ash 147 asks, what are your championship predictions? So I'm going to assume you saw Bahrain. Are you the only one? Because I know I'm feeling this way a little bit. Are you also feeling a little bit like Red Bull's a little bit ominous here, given how much they dominated Bahrain?
Yeah, completely. I think it was clear to me, and maybe to everyone really, that they're way ahead of the field. And even if some teams did catch up, I think by then might be a little bit too late. So but it still makes for an interesting mid-pack battle. And even it's mixed up quite a lot, actually. I feel this season some teams that I expected to be up front aren't. So I think that let's say it might be a little bit of unless they really make a mess of it, it seems like it's Red Bulls to lose, and otherwise it'll be interesting who comes second and third as well.
Were you rooting for Aston Martin a little bit there with Fernando Alonso on the podium too? Just seeing Aston Martin back up the front there. That must have been fun to watch, though, right?
It was, yeah. It's. I mean, someone like a veteran like him coming back strong, and I mean, last season his performance was unbelievable. I think he was one of the top drivers last season with the
Agreed.
package that he had. He outperformed many. So seeing him in a good car and being able to come back after so many years, I think it was emotional to see that. It's quite cool.
Definitely, definitely. From Kieran, who asks, is Saudi Arabia one of the best tracks in terms of racing that F1 has ever seen? So what are your thoughts on Jeddah's track? I mean, it's quite the spectacle, incredibly fast. I'd love to hear what your perspective is. Have you been able to race on it yet?
I haven't been able to race on it, but I think just driving it, and then I've been on the sim as well.
Okay.
It's unbelievably fast, and as a driver, that kind of narrow, high speed, it's something that I think gives a thrill for everyone, and made for quite good racing as well. So I think not just the driver, but spectators enjoyed the races as well, and it always kind of made for some nail biting moments, if I recall. So I'm biased. I think it's one of the top tracks up there for sure.
I think so too.
And I'm excited to race one day. Hopefully, can get myself in a car racing the track someday.
I'd love to see some GTs around there. I mean, yeah, for F1 terms, this is an unbelievably fast track. I think it's something like 155 mile an hour averages. That's off the charts for an F1 car. Makes for a great spectacle, certainly. I can't complain. You've had a couple of really good races in F1 so far, so I'm right with you. One more big one as well from Animal Instinct on Twitter, who asks, who do you think will develop their car and the most this season and will improve as the year goes on? So I think there might be a couple of obvious teams in there that maybe underperformed a little bit, but how do you look at the shape of the grid right now, Reema, and who do you think might make some gains?
I really hope Mercedes do. I think that last season they did, and they turned it around. But I hope this season they can do it sooner and quicker. And I guess that's just also because I'm a Mercedes fan. But
Okay, fair enough.
yeah, and who surprised me really was the McLarens. I didn't really think that. I thought if anything they would be quite competitive this season. But that shocked me. So I think that they have a lot of room to grow, and if they get it right with an upgrade, then we can see them jump a few places as well.
Definitely think there's some scope to improve there for those two teams, certainly. Before we go, Reema, the floor is yours. How can we find you on social media? How can we follow your career as it hopefully blossoms?
Yeah, you can find me just Reema Juffali on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can also please follow our team, the Motorsport, the idea, and same sort of channel. You should find us on everything. We're hoping to grow the team and create a platform for everyone really, and yeah, hopefully you see us competing and winning our races. So yeah, the more fans we have, the merrier, and yeah, I'm looking forward to get the season going, and of course for this race this weekend. I'm actually going to the track not long from now, and just after the call.
Yeah. Have a great weekend. Huge pleasure to have you on the show, Reema. Thank you so much, and all the best in your racing career going forward.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure being with you, and yeah, maybe we'll catch up soon.
Here's hoping. Special thanks to Reema Juffali for that fantastic interview. All the very best to her in Tiba Motorsport as well. She was on the BBC's 100 most influential women list last year, making great strides in Saudi Arabia, and honoured genuinely as one of the hosts of this channel to be able to genuinely give someone like that a platform on here in front of the world. So thank you, Reema, for the wonderful interview, and thanks everyone in the chat for watching along as well. Again, I've got a couple more questions to get through as well. Send in your questions. I might have time for a couple of guys from the chat as well to chip in question-wise towards the end if need be. But we got one more from the fans on Twitter, and it's Marco who asks, why is coloured carbon not used by any team? Same costs and strength as black carbon? Would be nice to see some more colour on the cars. Now, I know, Hannah, you did a little bit of digging on this, didn't you?
I did. Believe it or not, it's not a subject that I know a lot about, but I did do a little bit of research yesterday and found that, I mean, carbon is black, and dyed carbon, it's not really something that's very widespread in the motorsport world. But if you were to use colored carbon, the way they would make it does add weight and does add cost. So if a team were to use colored carbon, they might as well just use the paint that they have been using for the last few years anyway, because weight is added with colored carbon. So that's what I found, which is interesting. And it's actually a question that I could have come up with myself, because it is actually a really interesting one, and does make you wonder, why don't they use colored carbon? But I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I knew a little bit about this. I didn't actually know until doing some research for this question that actually colouring the carbon adds a degree of weight in of itself. So, like, what's the point, really? And, well, you're not really punished for having exposed carbon anyway. There's no drawback to it besides... I mean, I may have mentioned it in the exposed carbon video we did a couple of weeks ago, where I said that there's no real penalty besides maybe ticking off your marketing department a little bit by maybe having a lack of space to plaster sponsors over it. So that might be a little bit of a problem in and of itself. But I don't, again, from a performance standpoint, there's no real drawback to shaving a degree of paint off your car. A fully painted F1 car weighs about 6 extra kilos. And
when you think about it like that, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't think, you look at an F1 car, go, wait, there's 6 kilos of paint on that thing. That's like a stone in if anyone uses that UK weigh-in metric. A kilo of paint is about 6 kilos is about 13 pounds. So that's a lot of weight on that one. So yeah, there's no real drawback to shaving the paint off. I mean, we're talking really about aesthetics. More than anything else, and if you're adding weight by having colored carbon and you're adding extra money for it, then there's no real point on that one. So yeah, like I completely get the sentiment. But I mean, are you an exposed carbon fan, Hannah? Unless it's on a Mercedes.
I don't mind it. I think I mean, if a car is painted black, like I think, is it the Alfa Romeo that does use a bit of black paint, or am I wrong?
I think they use a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does look better if it's painted black, just because I like the strong contrast of the black. But carbon, it doesn't look that bad. It's all right. I think it looks. Actually, do you know what? Night tracks under the lights, it looks all right. I'll give you that.
It does. I mean, I'm not that bothered by it. I know some people are, because I mean, if there was one thing I noticed doing car launch seasons, that people do care a lot about how these cars look aesthetically and what have you. And yeah, having exposed carbon in certain places maybe isn't the best of looks, and in certain atmospheres it's not going to be great on TV from that standpoint either. So I totally get the vibe on that one. So yeah, I could totally see that happens. Let's talk a little bit about the race tomorrow as well. And guys in the chat, if you've got a couple of questions you want to send in for us regarding qualifying and the race tomorrow, feel free. We've got a little bit of extra time to get them in if need be. But Hannah, do you think it's going to be a straightforward Perez win tomorrow? Do you see any surprises coming maybe?
Well, I don't think it's going to be a straightforward Perez win, but I don't think it's going to be a straightforward race at all, to be honest. I think, if we look at the last 2 races that we've had here, there's been safety cars, there's been
Guaranteed.
People hitting the wall. Yeah, 100% success rate of safety cars so far in Saudi. That's a tongue twister, actually. Yeah. Success rate, safety cars in Saudi. There we go. But yeah, we're bound to have one. We're bound to have a yellow flag. And I feel like there's going to be people that, are lucky with pit stops when it comes to that. And so I don't think it's going to be straightforward. But in terms of Max ploughing his way back through the field and into P1, I do think that's likely. Whether there's safety cars or not, the Red Bull is just so strong. I don't think it's going to be a definite Perez win, but I think there is a high. I think if I was to vote, I would probably go for a Max win tomorrow.
You really think Verstappen will win from the front?
I mean, I hope not. Not anything against Max. I just a great race, I promise.
Yeah.
But I just think it's bound to happen. And if it does happen, it's pretty disappointing for the rest of the season, because if he can win from 15th, it just goes to show that whatever happens, even if he does, go out in Q2, that he probably can make his way back up to the front again. And what was it, George Russell that said he's probably going to win every race this season?
George said so, yeah. He reckons George reckons on Friday, he said Red Bull will win every single race this season.
Yeah.
And
it's looking likely. If Max can win tomorrow, that is.
The fact you're even talking about this is a realistic possibility says it all to me, quite frankly. So Mike in the chat says, "Gonna ask, name a lap number in which Max will take the lead." Hannah, pinion L
How
to the
many laps
mast.
are there actually tomorrow? How many?
I think it's 50, I think it's like 50 odd.
Okay, in that case, lap 2.
Stop now, and your serious answer.
Okay, I'm gonna guess lap 42.
It's a 50 lap race, so you reckon maybe at the end, maybe
Yeah, right
Max...
at the end.
Yeah, but I have to wait and see on that one. Noah also asking, what position do you think McLaren will be? Well, we got Piastri starting from P8. Do you think he might be able to stay in the points?
It depends who's right behind him. We've got Gasly, Hulkenberg, Zhou, I feel like he could. Definitely around the P9 to P13 kind of range, I kind of see him at.
Okay.
I think he could stay up there, but I do think Norris could also catch up a little bit. It depends how good McLaren's race pace is, but they looked quite strong today, definitely compared to last race. So yeah, do you think they could stay up there? I feel like they could.
It's a little bit uncharted waters for me because we've just not seen the McLaren over a full race distance properly yet. Norris was through the pits 6 times. I think it's
excellent point, Matt.
Yeah, like Piastri, unfortunately his car died early, and then like Norris was around the Williams sort of range before he had to start going through the pits. So I don't think points is too outlandish a claim. I think the midfield is really, really close at the moment, and I think if McLaren gets a good run together, I think it's possible they could get into the points, which I guess would be a step in the right direction for McLaren, but then again, I guess anything would be a step in the right direction after Bahrain on that one. And Mortal Duke reckons 6th and a DNF. So
interesting.
Another reliability error potentially, maybe. That could be interesting.
That's a great point. I mean, for McLaren, just 2 finishing cars would be a step forward for them.
It would be.
P18 and P19, I think they'd take that.
I don't think they would take that, but
maybe I used the wrong word.
Yeah, but I think technically it would be an improvement, I guess. So we have to wait and see on that one. But all those discussion points, all the drama from the race itself, will be discussed right here on the WTF1 Wrap, powered by MoneyGram, tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. with me and Charlie. So we'll be back for that. We'll be picking some of the winners and losers to come out of the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, drive shaft error, starting P15. There's your big story. How far up the field will he end up? Let us know in the comments. I've been Dre Harrison. She's been Hannah Atkinson. I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Take care. Take care.